Hi everyone, it's Darlene. Welcome back for another card. Today's card uses a new set that I just got from Mama Elephant called Woodland Gifts. It's got a lot of cute animals in it. I'm also using the Stitch Circles by Simon Says Stamp and my Inktense pencils. So the first thing I'm going to do is take a piece of Nina Solar White cardstock and I'm going to arrange these circles on it. This is cut to 4 by 5 1/4. And I'm going to mark them with my pencil because I just kind of want to see where they're going to be laid out, and then I'll take it over to my Big Shot and I'll cut all these scissors. So I'm just sort of measuring how big I want this biggest circle to be. I'm using the small circle once and then one of the medium circles twice. Now I'm going to put that one into place using some surgical tape, and then I'm just going to use my drawn lines to cut the rest. So these circles have stitching on the outside, which is really nice. Okay, so this is a piece of Ranger watercolor paper, and I cut it the size of an A2 card, and I'm just measuring it in the upper left-hand corner, and then I'll mark where I want the cardstock to be cut, and then I did this earlier and my camera was off, but I just marked the circles with a pencil so I would know where to stamp my animals. So I'm going to use my Misty, and I'm going to place my animals inside each of the circles, and I'm going to stamp them all at the same time. So I'm going to use Ranger Archival ink because it's a waterproof ink, and in my black ink review I found that this ink was the best for watercoloring. So I'm going to ink that up, stamp it down, and then you'll see it comes out perfect. Now I also wanted to show you that you could use the Misty in the opposite direction. So my bear was going to be hanging off, so I just turned it around, arranged my bear, and then I'll ink him up with the same ink, and then I'll close it. So it's very versatile. You can switch it around. Now I did get a little bit of ink on my foam pad, but that's not a big deal. I just wipe it off with my absorber and everything's fine. And now I'm going to use the Misty again with the grid sheet to stamp my sentiment in the lower right hand corner. And that'll make sure I get it just lined up. Now for the little flower, I just used an acrylic block to put it in the hands of this little mouse. And then I stamped the other two items, the jar of honey and the heart, just on a piece of Nina Solar White cardstock so that it would just be thinner, because I'm going to be tucking it into the arms. Now I'm just going to erase my pencil lines, but I'm going to leave just a very faint line just so I can see where I need to place that panel that has the circles in it to make sure it's lined up exactly the way I measured it to begin with. So I'm just going to leave a faint line, but most of the pencil I'm going to erase away, but you won't even see it. Now I'm using two water brushes. One's a Ranger Detailer and the other one is the smaller of the two brushes that come in the Stampin' Up! Aqua Brush set. Alright, now I'm going to color my animals with my Inktense pencils. I like to use a very light hand, so not much pressure on my pencil, and I like to use a dull tip. I don't like a sharp tip because it tends to create kind of a groove inside the paper, especially if you put too much pressure, and then it's hard to get the color out of that groove and blend it on the paper. So as you can see, I barely colored anything at all, but you'll see how much color comes out of this. What I do is I start in the white area and I move my brush into the colored area, and then I stop, and you can see I keep moving it off to the side, and that's where I'm wiping my brush off on a dry tissue to remove the color on it so that I can start back up in the white area. So I just colored with the pencil in the shadow areas, and then I keep starting in the white and moving toward the color. So these animals don't have a lot of color in them because I wanted them to be more natural looking. So you'll see that I put color mostly in the shadow areas. Now once I've blended the color that I've laid down on the paper first, I wanted to add a little bit extra color, and to do this I'm going to pick the color up off of the actual pencil. So I'll just touch my water brush to the tip of the pencil and it'll pull a bunch of color. So you have to kind of be careful there to make sure you control how much color is actually going on there. Now as far as colors go, I'll have all the colors listed in the blog post, so if you're interested in that you can take a look. I'm using the smooth side of the Ranger watercolor paper, and that's because I wanted it to be really close to the panel that's going to be on top of it, the white panel. So and that's another reason why I use the Ranger watercolor paper, which is not my preferred watercolor paper, but it's extremely white, and so it matches really well to white, just plain white cardstock. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and speed this up and turn the music up, and you can watch me finish coloring. Alright, now I'm done coloring it. I'm just going to cut out these little items with a scissor. And now I'm going to cut the arm. So I'm just going to cut the front arm that's showing on two of these animals. I'm going to go around with my X-Acto knife, and I have a pad underneath. And I'm going to turn it over and really flip it to see if I'm getting in there. And you can see I've got it just opening right there. You don't want to go too far with it, just enough to hold the item. And then I'm going to repeat this process for the raccoon. So just cutting around, being really careful, because I'm sometimes not so good with an X-Acto knife. Anyway, so I'm going to keep going with this one until I get it up just enough, because that's where the heart's going to go. Okay, next step is to attach this front panel to my watercolor cardstock. So I've already trimmed it according to those pencil marks that I had, and I'm going to use some Stampin' Up! Dimensionals to pop it right on there. I used the dimensionals instead of the Scotch foam tape because there were a lot of holes that I had to work around. Alright, I'm going to take this panel and I'm going to adhere it to some Sunshine cardstock by Simon Says Stamp, and then I'll adhere this panel to a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch folded piece of Nina Solar White cardstock. Alright, now it's time to add the items into the arms of these animals, so I'm just going to pop it up with my X-Acto knife. I'm going to apply a little bit of two-way glue to the item, and then I'll just slide it right in there and press it down. And I'm going to do the same thing for the honey jar, which, by the way, I wrote the word honey on it with a Copic fine tip marker. Just squeeze that word on there. And then this is when I realized that I completely forgot to color the holes blue. Now I had planned to put the blue on there after I put the Nina panel that had the circles on it, but before I put it onto the yellow cardstock. So I just had to be a little careful with keeping the blue to the circles and not going over the edge. Now you can see here I'm starting to have trouble because my Stampin' Up! Aqua Painter ran out of water and I didn't realize it, and I put more color on there, and then before I could blend it, it started to dry because I didn't have any water in my pen. Anyway, and then another problem I had here is the Ranger watercolor paper. It's not my favorite because it tends to pill up, and I was doing a lot of coloring in that area where my pen dried up, and so it started to peel off, and so I was not happy about that. So you can see it's kind of messed up over there, but you know, it is what it is, and I actually got mad at it, and I kind of like really rubbed it a lot, and then I had to go back and fix it, which I did an okay job, but whatever. Anyway, so that's the card for today. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.